All right. Yesterday was the 25th anniversary of Bash at the Beach 96, of course, when Hulk Hogan turned, revealed himself as the third man. And that kind of made me think a segment we haven't done in a few weeks. So there was obviously some rumor and innuendo to steal from the Bruce Pritchard show over the years about other people that could have been
shots for us
the third man. But what if Hulk Hogan wasn't the third man? Would who do you think would have been or should have been the third man if it wasn't Hulk Hogan? And if it wasn't Hulk Hogan, does the NWO have the impact that it did? Because, like, I mean, just the Hogan heel turn. I don't think there's a bigger heel turn in the history of wrestling.
It's not even close.
I really don't. To see Hulk Hogan go from red yellow to Hollywood Hogan and to form the NWO. There's not a heel turn bigger, in my opinion. If you think there's one, feel free to give that opinion as well. But if Hogan's not the third man, who do you think it is, and is it as impactful? Are we still talking about the NWO in the same way 25 years later?
Mabel.
Fucking Tim, I love you, man.
Mabel.
No, let me take it real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
For the record, what you said is 1,000% accurate. It's Hogan is not even close because you have to understand the culture. Someone's awake. Someone's awake.
Oh, no. We're gonna get another
run in again.
Somebody else take it real quick so I can calm him down.
Sure, go ahead.
There it is.
Anybody want it?
Yeah, I will say the name on the NWO line says Hogan, but the name is Horace Hogan. Horace Hogan joins the NWO, and we talk about it for 3.5 weeks, and we never talk about the NWO ever again.
Horace Hogan. Okay, I think I'm gonna settle down. The only person that could have had a remotely somewhat impact, not even close to Hogan, by the way, for record. I don't think anyone could because of you have to understand how big Hogan was and what he meant to the business at that time. Even though his star was somewhat waning when he came to WCW 94, he was still Hulk Hogan. I don't care who you are. If you casual fan, non-fan, you think pro wrestling, who's first name comes to mind? Hulk Hogan, period, in discussion. The only person that would have made sense to do that was Sting. It would have probably made sense. It would have had impact within the WCW and whatnot. It wouldn't have the cultural impact as much because let's face it, even though Sting is a well-known, within the WCW realm, he's not, unless you're watching WCW product, which honestly I really wasn't. I knew who he was, but I wasn't watching it consistently. It would have the impact. Hulk Hogan is well-known everywhere. And that not only exploded WCW, it exploded pro wrestling as a whole. And you look at all the ratings across the board, not just WCW, WWF too. It exploded.
Yeah,
for the next 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely.
That's why when I, say one about Terry Bollea, say one about Hulk Hogan, what do you feel about him today? When I'd say you have to be a complete fucking moron if you say that Hulk Hogan's not belong to Mount Rushmore because he's the only guy that's changed the business twice. Not once, twice. Hulkamania, because you don't get WrestleMania without Hulkamania. That goes hand in hand. And then the next, a decade later with the NWO, that doesn't work as much without Hogan. End discussion. So the only guy would be Sting, the only guy that could have somewhat of an impact. It would definitely impact the WCW's bottom line. I don't know if it will have the cultural impact in the same way because he wasn't as well known a name as Hogan was.
That's fair. Tim or Matt, you guys want to? Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Sure.
I don't think it could have been Sting because of the fact that even though Sting was the name that was floated around internally as being the third man, the NWO makes sense, especially in that iteration, as being outside in people. So people who have ties to WWF, which makes me think that it's the people who would have been best fits as third men would have been Sting's teammates at Bash at the Beach, being Lex Luger and Randy Savage.
Right.
But as EJ said, it's got to be Hogan. Like the amount of the amount that the needle turned for Hulk, not just being the third man of the NWO, but like being a villain.
Yeah.
In general, being a villain is way beyond belief. Like,
Can I just say real quick, like my experience of watching that, because I watched it in real time, I was so shocked. I was so shocked about when he turned that it didn't even hit me until the next night on Nitro. And I watched Nitro, I'm like, oh, okay, he really is doing this shit. This is going to happen. That's how stunned I was. It took me 24 hours to process the whole thing. And after Nitro, when he throws Rey Mysterio into the trailer and all that, and to take over, then it hit me. That's how stunned I was in the moment. Again, we talk about surprises. We don't get those anymore. That is by far the biggest surprise in history of wrestling.
That was the first time I ever got a WCW pay-per-view.
wow.
Because I grew up a WWF guy, but I was already buying into, well, who's the third man going to be? We had seen Razor Ramon and Diesel show up, and why are they there? And they're telling us there's going to be this third guy. Who's going to be the third guy? And so it was the day after my birthday. So I convinced that's what I got for my birthday that year from my parents is I wanted I wanted to see and holy shit. I mean, it's a moment that changed everything. And yeah, for me, like it's got to be Hogan. I don't think there's anybody, and Tim, you bring up a great point, kind of the outside guys looking in thing of why it couldn't be Sting. The only other name that I had was a Sting or Luger, but I don't think it has the impact.
No,
because the impact of it was the fact that Hulk Hogan, who was the WWF guy and always carried the flag for the company, and then he came over to WCW and he was going to be the guy that was going to lead the WCW charge, and then all of a sudden he turns his back and goes with those WWF guys that we still don't really know why they're here.
Right.
And it, yeah, I mean, for Hogan to become a bad guy,
Luger couldn't work.
Sense.
Luger couldn't work because Luger has done it before. Luger has been both sides of the aisle. He's been a heel and face. It wouldn't work. Sting would have worked within the WCW construct only because of the fact that it's WCW. But Hogan represents something bigger than just a promotion. Okay, Hulk Hogan was bigger than the World Wrestling Federation. He was bigger than Vince McMahon. I don't think people comprehend that today because now, for the first time, there's no breakout star where Vince can't control. Hogan was the one guy you could not control. Period. Discussion. Yeah. And Hogan, again, the outside impact, the NWO T-shirts. It was wildfire, dude. It was wildfire.
Matt, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, when you posed the question, I couldn't think of anyone else that would make sense. So it has to be Hogan. It's definitely the biggest turn. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again, to be honest. The only person that could even come close was Cena. I don't think they'd ever do that at this point in his career. So there's no way of forecasting that any moment is ever going to be as big as that moment was.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a face big enough that would send the shockwaves of that person turning. I mean, Roman Reigns was the next closest thing.
Yeah,
and he's hit an absolute home run being a heel by himself. That we would never see it. Randy Hogan would be another name. Jobber Randy Hogan could easily slide in and fill the void if Hulk was not available.
I actually was in a Twitter discussion yesterday about if there was anybody in like today's fan. Somebody said today's fan will never understand what the Hogan turn was. And I think Charlie had responded. The only one that listener of the show, Charlie, had said the only person that comes close for today's fan would be John Cena. And
he's correct.
And yeah, like the debate started because the person was like, well, Cena, it doesn't even come close. I'm like, to today's fan, it does. Because today's fan didn't live through Hulkamania and didn't.
Jim, I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
It's 4 years ago, thing, not though. Today's fan. 4 years ago,
okay.
fan.
Right.
Well, I think what they meant with today's fan was the generation that didn't watch Hogan and live that turn in
25 and under. No.
So yeah, so it's people that kind of came up with John Cena as their top babyface.
Okay, I apologize.
But I mean, in retrospect, Cena was a 50-50 character for the bulk of his career. Was Hogan a 50-50 character?
No. Hogan was white meat babyface and discussion.
So I don't even know. Like I said, John Cena, and I still don't think that.
Now, Matt, do you mean 50-50 to the crowds or toward the character? Because you get booed a lot too, also. But
that's what I'm saying. Is more of like because Cena was a heel towards the people that already didn't like him. So it's kind of like he was already doing the job.
The Doctor of Thugonomics wasn't a face gimmick at all. I mean, he would run down the town he was in rapping. That's a great point, Matt.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's Hogan's not even close.
That's why I said it was the only thing that came even close at all for today's fan to understand. Like if Cena would have made that hard turn that people wanted him to 5 years ago or so.
Right.
Did you just destroy a fingernail on that See You in Hell water?
Yeah.
That sounded violent.
I heard that one too.
Oh,
we all felt that.
I honestly believe right now the only one that comes closer right now that we see the impact really with the wrestling community is what we're seeing right now, Roman Reigns.
Yeah,
but even then, it's not even close to Hogan though, because again, the cultural aspect.
Well, the unfortunate thing is when he had his turn, we're in the midst of a Thunderdome pandemic era, so his turn didn't. That return and heel turn for Roman didn't happen in real time in a real crowd.
That's true. That's a good point.
The biggest heel turn over the last, I don't know the exact number of years, but it's got to be when Seth leaves the Shield.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that is a
big turn in general. Yeah,
within the wrestling parlance, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a huge one, actually.
And that doesn't, I mean, again, none of these come anywhere close to, even like the times when Triple H turned on Shawn Michaels with DX or any of those, like those felt big for that moment, but like none of that stuff ever comes close. But what is the number 2 heel turn? Can you think of like what the next biggest heel turn would be after the Hogan? Because like I think we all agree there's nothing bigger than the Hogan turn. Like that is the number 1. And like I couldn't.
Is it Andre turning on Hulk at WrestleMania 3?
Oh man, that might be a good one.
Yeah, the only other one that popped into my head was Vince being the leader of the corporate ministry.
Yeah, it's me, Austin, son of a bitch. Yeah.
What about
the Batista moment?
But that was
a face turn for Randy.
Yeah, because that was.
Oh, correct. They were heels to begin with, and then they were booting Randy out. That's a good point.
What about the Road Warriors turning on Dusty? I mean, we have to go into like really old, way back wrestling.
Even back that
Isn't that a shame that we have to do that and there's not a current?
I mean, the Seth one, but I think because over
Austin?
the last
Austin at 17.
Austin at 17 is a big one.
Lee says
Brad at 13.
You think the double turn thing? But I feel like around that time and kind of up until now, Lee says Orndorff turning on Hogan. But I feel like over the last, 2 decades, it's kind of Attitude Era and beyond. It's kind of become that Vince McMahon promo, the shades of gray. Like you don't necessarily get presented good guy and bad guy, and it's kind of whatever you want it to be. So like when Seth Rollins turns on the Shield, there's a section of the audience that cheers that, even though it's a heel turn, but there's a section of the audience that's like, I love this. Yeah. I love the heel turn. So like, and that's kind of what it's become too. So it doesn't have the same impact maybe.
I think it's such a different product too with the fans, and maybe it's really goes back to what we started our podcast with being smartened up a little bit. That you could take something in AEW like the Dark Order, which was a heel faction, and then what happened, and then just naturally, organically, just start turning face. And why fight that? Why make them do dastardly things all the time to make them heels? And even doing dastardly things anymore isn't such a bad guy thing. Sometimes that's just what needs done to get things done. Sure. So, I think it's a blend of like the fans getting a little smarter, the fans being, able to enjoy the shades of gray, and this is what's being presented, and you fill out the narrative of how this faction or this group or this character will play out.
Just like The Rock joining the Nation, like does that rank up there?
Because the fans turned on him before then.
Well, that's a good point.
Right, that was, I think, in response
Die, Rocky,
to
die.
Yeah, no, that's a real good point. Yeah, and I think Tim, you hit a pretty good one with Andre turning on Hogan. Yeah, it is wild. It's like, I mean, yeah, there's obviously been heel turns along the way. But there's nothing that feels, industry shaking,
right?
Like an Andre, joining the Heenan family and stuff like that. It doesn't have, and maybe too, it's the volume of content that we get as well. I think that's changed it, because like
I'm sitting here trying to think of a heel turn that's happened in NXT, and I can't even think of Adam Cole, but was the Undisputed Era already kind of a
Gargano?
Kevin Owens turned on Sami Zayn.
That was huge. That was a great one. That might have been one of the greatest turns.
Yeah, Cole leaving the Undisputed Era. I'm trying to think of other ones.
Man, that Sami Zayn one.
Ciampa to Gargano.
When Ciampa hit him with the crutch.
Yeah.
Like that was
that was a good one. Okay.
Was there anything with the Four Horsewomen? Did any of them like turn on each other? I don't think they ever did, because they just got called up. Oh, that's a good one, Lee. The List of KO.
There's a good one.
Festival of Friendship. That is a great one. But again, like that we have to like sit here and like hard think of these moments, because again, you get from WWE alone, you get 7 hours of programming a week. From AEW with Dark and Elevation and Dynamite, you get 6-7 hours, and then you're going to add Rampage on top of it. So like,
it's about as long as this podcast has been going.
There's so much content that's thrown at us that EJ, before we move to the news, the thing we were hitting on here, we've all agreed Hogan is the number one heel turn. Is there one that you can think of that would be a solid number two? I think Tim had thrown out Andre turning on Hogan and joining the Heenan.
That's a great one, actually. That's a great one, because again, cultural impact, not expecting it. The only one other than Andre, I would say, because that would be my second choice also, is probably Austin turn on the Rock. Not turning on the Rock, but the way that went down. Now, granted, that didn't make sustain because the way he did it.
Sure.
But that had a lot of noise around it, both negative and positive, really, to be honest with you. So
that's a good one.
And that essentially ended the Attitude Era, really.
Yeah. Devin saying the Mark Henry fake retirement.
That was a lot of fun.
that was a great segment.
That's the thing. There's a lot of like fun turns.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But we're talking about like the biggest
Yeah, nothing comes close to Hogan.
No.
I guess
Yeah.
another good one is a Savage turn on Hulk, Mega Powers. But
Okay.
again, we saw that coming from months of, the clues are there.
It's all
It wasn't
Hogan's
as
fault.
shocking.
The lust in his eyes.
You have lust in your eyes, Elizabeth.
Maybe the only one from a historical point of view that's talked about and referenced the most would be the barber shop and the Rockers.
That's a good one.
There you
But
go.
to put a tag team breaking up on the same level as like Hulk Hogan turning
it's
his back
probably not on
on
that
years
level.
of fandom, it's just not on that level. But that's
No, I
something
think-
that
And then
is still
everything
talked
else.
about
No, I
to this
think
day.
no, I think Tim knocked out of the park here. If there's a close second, there's going to be Andre.
That's fair.
But again, that also kind of signifies the rub and Hulk. Hulk was at that point, his third year into the title reign. He was so fucking over. Him and Andre are boys. No one saw it coming. Andre's off TV for about 6 months. Comes back and he turns on him with Bobby Heenan.